As you may have suspected, the Magic Archer is one of, if not the most powerful vocation in Dragon's Dogma 2. They have overwhelming offense with lock-on and homing magical arrows that rarely seem to miss enemies' weak points, let alone miss at all. You'll feel like you installed an aimbot. They can burn through large enemies' HP very quickly as they're able to sit back and target the most vulnerable spots relentlessly, where melee classes need to get in and reach the weak point using terrain, climbing, or stunning the enemies to the ground. The Magic Archer can unleash one of the most devastating abilities in the game, which is able to absolutely destroy even drakes and dragons' multiple health bars in seconds. But they're not just about that offense, oh no, they're also an amazing support. They can crowd control with freezes and sedatives, they can keep their team healthy from range and can resurrect from range as well, meaning unlike the basic archer vocation, you'll never need to actually get in the middle of fights when your allies are struggling. But they won't be, because you're the Magic Archer, baby! You're unstoppable. So if that interests you, keep watching as I run through special mechanics, every single weapon skill, core skill, and augment in the vocation's arsenal, then follow up with tips and tricks, how to get the most out of the vocation, what pawns you should have with you, recommended builds, and finally, how to unlock it and its ultimate ability, Martyr's Bolt. So if you like these videos, let me know below with a like and comment. Alright, let's get right into it. So I mentioned that the Magic Archer is ridiculously strong. Well, one of the reasons why is its unique mechanics. Like the Archer, pressing down the right bumper or the right mouse button will let you aim down sights. Unlike the Archer, a magical circle then appears. You then paint targets within the circle and points on them will start to light up. When you release the button, you'll release magical arrows. You shoot multiple depending on how long you've charged. What's amazing about this mechanic is that you can target specific points on larger enemies, like their legs, their heads, or big glowing, obviously weak point pustules. With small enemies, you don't have the same luxury, but it doesn't matter as you'll wreck them fast anyway. Holding your sights over a target will continue to stack up shots against them, represented by the rotating dots. The more dots, the more arrows coming their way. Pressing your light attack will fire off an arrow without aiming down sights, which auto-targets enemies. Your heavy attack, or at least the button reserved for it for the other vocations, is an ability to switch from pinpoint volley mode to rivet shot mode. Pinpoint volley has a larger circular reticule and paints a lot of targets' points easily. Rivet shot narrows the reticule quite a bit. In return though, targets are painted faster. This includes a faster time to stack potential arrows on a single point that you're targeting. So naturally you'd think you'd switch to pinpoint when you have a lot of targets coming at you, and you'd use rivet shot for less targets or big creatures, but in practice, rivet shot is better for all cases, because if you increase your sensitivity if you're on console, or if you just get better at painting targets with a mouse, which doesn't take much skill, then rivet shot's speed increase is far superior. Both of these modes can affect weapon skills as well by doing the same thing, letting you have a wide target lock range or a narrower but faster one. So stick with rivet shot and don't look back. So I mentioned that the vocation feels extremely overpowered. It's balanced by the fact that it has 0 ways of disengaging, which is a fancy way of saying it can't get out of sticky situations easily, beyond simply turning around and attempting to run away, that is. But in the end, this doesn't balance them at all. They're more ridiculous than they were in Dragon's Dogma 1. It's kept in check more so by the fact that this would be one of the latest vocations you can unlock, just behind the Warfarer. Unless of course you check out my locations guide at the end of this video. You also mostly deal magical damage, making you not so good against magically resistant enemies, in theory, but in reality you can burn through them as well. Golems you can just avoid from range and easily target their glowing runes, or you can use Arctic Bolt, which does high physical damage. If your pawns could pick up this vocation, the game would be completely trivialized. They could heal and resurrect each other, they can put out high damage, and can cover all bases except taunting. Thankfully, only you can pick up this vocation. Now we get to skills and augments. First up are the Magic Archer's weapon skills. You can have 4 of these equipped on the face buttons at any time. They all do something active and more or less make the class what it is. So this choice is an important one. Every weapon skill can be upgraded, and the ones you see here are the upgraded version, so if yours has a different name, don't worry, it's just the version below the upgrade. For example, you start with Frost Seeker Bolt, but it upgrades to Frost Hunter Bolt with DCP, the currency you earn just by killing things, and you'll use it to buy weapon skills, core skills, and augments on this vocation and other vocations. More skills and augments get unlocked for purchase as you rank up. Almost all of the following skills are better activated while aiming down sights, as it'll do more damage, so I'll just assume you're doing that, but keep in mind you can fire them off without aiming down your sights. So first up is Frost Hunter Bolt. While aiming down sights, you paint a smaller amount of shots, but when unleashed, you send out frost-imbued arrows that not only seek out the point you targeted, but pass through it and loop back around, continually hitting the target over and over until they fade. If the high damage wasn't enough, it also builds up a frost effect on the enemy, eventually freezing them. Yes, freezing large enemies as well. This is a very powerful skill, and you'll find yourself falling back on this like it's an old familiar friend that you know has your back. You can fire for as long as you have stamina, so you can spam this. This is a core skill for all builds, including support, which could very much use the crowd control effect. Candescent Orb is up next, and like its namesake, it's basically like placing a candle out in the world. Really big, powerful, burning arc. No, okay, it doesn't really work. The world does get incredibly dark during the night, and well, this makes sure you can see where you're going. It does, however, do damage in the center. To fire, you activate the skill, hold, and you'll see a visual representation of where it's going to land. Let go and it'll fire off in that location, similar to picking up and throwing something. I found it hard to do a lot of damage with, but it's a useful skill to have. When someone asks for an example of what a niche skill is, I bring up Ricochet Hunter. In caves or inside, it's absolutely devastating to a ridiculous level. An example is, you may never even see enemies in a cave if you just keep firing this off. You hold the button down, charge it up as much as you want, and unleash. Bolts will bounce around, getting stronger and stronger all throughout the cave. Kudos to the devs for the physics, by the way. It will wreck anything it comes in contact with, usually clearing out small caves completely with 1 or 2 fires off screen. It would be core on every single build without question if it wasn't for the fact that it really isn't good outside of enclosed spaces. You won't ever use it outside, but damn, the simple fact it's so good inside makes it so many of you should and will run it as your 4th pickup. Sophoric Bolt is up next, and it, once fully charged, puts an enemy to sleep, only waking when disturbed. So you can put an enemy completely out of the fight or let you avoid one if you don't want to fight. Honestly though, in practice, I never really found a consistent use for it. I rather put out damage or heal in a fight, and I could just run away from enemies I didn't want to tackle. I forgot I had it most times and therefore barely have any footage of it, nor do I want to go back and record it because I think the Magic Archer simply has better skills. Like Blaze Fang Arrow, my god does this do a lot of damage. You fire this off and the camera pans behind it, letting you control it with your mouse or right joystick. So you can use it to scout, you can use it to look for seeker tokens high up, or you can use it to precision bomb right in the middle of groups of enemies or right on top of the head of a large enemy. This skill feels slightly overtuned. It has a large AoE, hits like a truck, and if you're a better aim than me, it never misses, right? You can just spam this over and over to bring big enemies like Cyclopses down solo. This feels like a core skill unless you primarily focus on support, since a support build will want to keep their eyes on the battlefield. Arctic Bolt is up next, and as it charges, a ball of ice at the end of your bow gets larger, like the Candescent Orb, and you'll see where this ball is going to fly off to, making it harder to aim than your homing never miss arrows. However, it does big damage where it lands and comes with a huge amount of knockback factor, sending small enemies reeling and toppling over large ones when they're vulnerable. The biggest draw of this skill though is that the chunk of ice hitting the enemy isn't magical damage, it's physical, so it hits golems' weak points very nicely. It's a useful utility skill to have because everything else in your arsenal is magical damage. You won't be relying on it for damage like you would be with Frost Hunter or Blaze Fang, but having it on your loadout means you have more options. Speaking of options, Bolt Chain Stake gives you a lot of them. Whatever you paint is taking a lightning infused arrow that does minor damage, however, arrows stay in the target and arc lightning between each other, doing a lot of damage over time and, best of all, providing a very powerful disruption and stagger effect. You can fire tons of these on the ground and area deny, you can paint big targets with multiple and have lightning ongoing damage hitting them as you reposition. It's a useful skill, and just like Arctic Bolt, it's a great utility piece, but it won't be something you use over and over in a fight. After a few ranks, you'll get access to Sagatate Avalanche. As you hold the button down, magical bolts appear above you. Unleash at any time to send them flying at painted targets, dealing more damage when fully charged. Looks almost like rocket pods firing off at your targets. So this skill does a lot of damage, takes a bit to fully charge, and costs a fair amount of stamina. It's an honest skill, though if you pick this up, you'll want to swap out Frost Hunter because they both fill a similar role, damage filler while you have stamina. I personally prefer Frost Hunter because it comes out faster and has the slow and freeze effects, plus it can strike weak points behind flesh, terrain, and obstacles. However, I wouldn't blame you for liking this one because it really does look much cooler, pun not intended. Recovery Arrow is up next, and it's a core support skill if that's what you want to do. While casting this skill, you'll charge up. At max, if you target a pawn, you can resurrect them when they're downed. However, firing it off before its charge will heal your targets. Simple, elegant, and effective. A long-ranged heal. Get up on the high ground and support your pawns with the next few skills for a legit medic build. Life-taking arrow is not as simple as it appears. You can target one of your allies and the arrow moves slowly towards them, hitting enemies along its way, draining them of their life and giving it to your ally. Naturally, that means you have to be pretty good at positioning yourself. However, the area of effect of this skill is quite massive, and you can fire it at a wall or ground instead if you just want the damage and the stagger effect. A good damaging skill for a support to have, though having a proper damaging skill like Frost Hunter plus Recovery Arrow is fine too. Okay, while not as ridiculously OP as the Mystic Spearhand's Mirror Shield, Footless is a very good shield effect. What you'll want is a tank on your team with Bellow or Shield summons. These are abilities that taunt enemies. While enemies are jumping on your tank, you put this skill on them. It will absorb the hit completely and do high damage back to the enemy as it bursts open. So you protect your tank and send enemies flying at the same time. It's a great support skill, but useless on a damage build. So those are all the skills you'll unlock from rank 1 to 10. However, every vocation except the Warfarer has at least one secret ultimate ability. In the case of Magic Archer, it's Martyr's Bolt. You can make the argument that Sorcerer can put out some serious damage and has some boss killing shenanigans, but Martyr's Bolt puts that all to serious shame. When you cast this, targets get highlighted all around you almost instantly and you start charging, but you're not using your stamina. Oh no, you're sacrificing your max HP. Oh yes, your max HP. Not your HP, okay, there's a difference. Once you let go and unleash this skill, you'll send out bolts of pain everywhere, clearing screens, taking 5 health bars off dragons, or if you like to be frugal with your health, a few health bars here and there from this particular dragon. The very obvious drawback of this skill is you don't get your max health back unless you use a all heal elixir, rest at an inn, at home, or at a campsite. So you can't set off on an expedition and spam this skill. You can, however, save it until you see something out of your scope, then melt it completely. Just be sure to save some health for the journey home, or if you're like me, don't save anything for the swim back.
I never saved anything for the swim back.
Next up is the Vocation's 4 core skills. Purchase all of these as they unlock, there's no reason not to. We have Climactic Arrow, which makes you deal more damage if you time releasing your bow as your character flashes. It's not always convenient timing, but you can't say no to more damage. Then we have Scopic Sight, which increases your lock-on range, always useful as you want to be as far away as possible. Then we have Tracker's Sight, which increases the number of lock-on targets, once again, always useful. Finally, Protracting Arrow, which I haven't talked about in depth yet. Essentially, when you use a skill with an elemental damage type, so basically all of them, your auto attacks turn into that element for some time. This is especially good with Frost Hunter Arrow, as you can continue to build up the frost effect to a freeze effect even after you run out of stamina just using your normal auto attacks. It's not something you'll notice most of the time, but it does make a difference in combat. Finally, the Magic Archer can unlock 5 Augments. Ignore the rest you see here, these are just from other vocations. Yes, Augments, if you didn't already know, can be equipped in one of your 6 slots, regardless of your current vocation. The Magic Archer though can unlock Sustainment, which usefully makes your pawns more tanky, Ferocity, which gives you back some stamina when you get the finishing blow. Not as useful as you really want for stamina when you're fighting long drawn out encounters, and in that situation, you're not doing any killing. You're trying to kill something big, not a lot of little small things. Then we have Prolificity, which makes it so small targets will drop items, also not super useful when other augments can buff your character. Ascendancy, which buffs your pawns to do more damage, always useful, and Amelioration, which I haven't personally tested yet, so I don't know how much difference it actually makes to the time. But reviving pawns isn't much of a problem, so I never felt the need to pick this up. As you can see, I thought Sustainment and Amelioration were good enough to run alongside powerful augments I had already collected. So now that you know everything the Magic Archer can do, how do you play it? First, and I want to make this very clear from the start, if you know a hard fight is coming, look for a good position. Get up on high ground or get out into the open so you have room to move, and let your pawns go in first. From a good vantage spot, you can unleash with relative impunity, and with a good open area, you can move around and keep the damage hitting an enemy's weak spots while avoiding taking damage of your own. You have no good option to escape, so if you walk out and start getting ravaged by a creature or creatures that can animation lock you, you'll find yourself taking major damage. In terms of builds, you only really have three: a damage focus, a hybrid, or a support focus. I recommend damage or hybrid, but support is a legitimate choice. For the damage focus build, pick up Frost Hunter Bolt for your consistent, reliable stamina spender. Pick up Blaze Fang Arrow for starting fights, scouting, AoE damage to clear scrubs, or when a big enemy just needs some explosions to the face. Then your third skill should be your ultimate, Martyr's Bolt, for an insane, I can't beat this fight, oh shit button. Your fourth skill, however, should be utility. I opt for Arctic Bolt for the physical hit and knockback, but Ricochet Hunter is just as good, and Bolt Chain Stake is a lot of fun as well. It really is just personal choice. Then as a hybrid support and damage build, you simply want to swap out Blaze Fang for Recovery Arrow, and you can choose to replace your utility with Life Taking Arrow if you wish, though if you really like Blaze Fang, swap your utility skill out. Your pawns can fill in the gaps. Speaking of pawns, you should have at least one warrior or fighter with their taunt ability to pull aggro from you. This is very important as the Magic Archer likes to sit back uninterrupted. Also, like the Mystic Spearhand, you can make your tank immortal if you sit behind them and use your shield skill. You want a mage to heal if you haven't gone a support build, but the good thing about the hybrid and the support build is it's the only vocation you can go that doesn't need to have a mage in your party. You can keep all your pawns topped up just fine, so if that's the case, add another warrior, and for your third, you want ranged damage, an archer, or sorcerer depending on your taste. You could also go for a warrior or thief with helm splitter if you just want 3 melee classes smashing face, but then you'll be in charge of healing, hitting weak points, and hitting flying enemies. Though for your standard DPS build, you should definitely have a good mage. Then you want a good tank, either a warrior or a fighter, and for your third, you want another warrior or fighter, an archer, or a sorcerer. I opted for a sorcerer personally for their huge ultimate damage spells. We have the consistency, so it's nice to have burst as well. In a fight, send your pawns in first with the go command when you see enemies. Open with your Blaze Fang Arrow. If you're lucky, you'll hit most of them in the opening explosion. You can then follow up with more, or your Frost Fang Arrows. Weave in basic attacks when your stamina gets low, and use utility as you need. Like I mentioned at the start, I recommend using Rivet Shot mode to increase your DPS, and always be taking out stragglers before taking on the boss. Let your tank distract the boss. You just make sure your party doesn't get overwhelmed so you can focus on bringing the boss down quickly without it turning its attention to you. Really though, once you get this vocation going, you'll struggle to do the wrong thing. Usually just firing off a few skills is enough to win. You now know how to play the vocation. So how do you get it, and how do you get the ultimate? Very simply, you want to make your way to the bottom right of the map. You can do this early on, but it's recommended to go through this storyline until you get to the desert city of Batal naturally, because otherwise you'll be spending hours running away from monsters too hard for you to beat, and you'll have to go the back way. But you can do it if you absolutely must have it early. You just need to make your way into this cave here, then out of this cave, then walk down the path until you see this old dwarf. He needs assistance getting home, which I've marked on the map. But first you have to give him 3 wildflowers of any type to help his back. You should have tons on you, they're just everywhere in the world. Any wildflower will do. Then you need to slowly walk him home, or just be smart and carry him home. During the day, the tide is out and you can reach the house. At night, you won't be able to because the tide is in, so you need to wait for daytime if so. When you arrive, his wife will unlock the vocation for you. However, if you want to get the vocation's ultimate ability, you need to escort him to the hot springs to aid his back. If the option isn't available to you yet, come back when you rank the class up more. To take him to the hot springs, you just need to carry him past a lot of baddies, a golem, and random enemies like that all the way to town. Then once you're there, put him down. Make your way to the hot springs on foot, he will follow you, and bam, his wife will gift you the scroll that unlocks this ability. It's that easy. And there you have it, everything you need to know about the Magic Archer. It's a ridiculously powerful DPS and support vocation that isn't as flashy as the Mystic Spearhand or as fun as some of the other classes in terms of mechanics, but it's reliable and gets the job done. So if you like this video, you know what to do. Also, join my Discord if you have any questions or want to talk to some other awesome people. Until next time, ciao friends.
This brute has quite the temper. Look, there! The heart is bared. Now's our chance to strike.